Australia, with its vast desert and inhospitable climate, seems like an unlikely place for an animal like the donkey to thrive. However, donkeys have become a significant presence in the country's interior, particularly in the desert regions. But how did this animal, originally brought to Australia as a mere means of transportation and pack animal, end up becoming an invasive species in the Australian environment? The story of donkeys in Australia is one of adaptation, uncontrolled expansion, and environmental challenges. In the 18th and 19th centuries, European settlers began to explore the vast Australian territory. They needed animals to help them on long journeys and work in the mines and farms. Donkeys were chosen for their endurance and ability to withstand the harsh Australian climate. Initially, these animals were used in a controlled manner and played an important role in the country's colonization. But what seemed like an introduction without major consequences turned into a huge ecological problem. Donkeys began to reproduce at an alarming rate, and within a few years, their population grew out of control. Without natural predators to keep their numbers in check, they spread quickly across the land, especially in remote areas like the Australian desert, where food was abundant and space was vast. This, of course, led to a series of environmental problems, which we will explore throughout this video. From the moment donkeys were introduced to Australia, their ability to adapt to the environment was astonishing. They quickly settled in and began reproducing at an alarming rate. There were no natural predators to control their numbers, and the vast expanse of Australian land provided an ideal habitat for these animals. What initially seemed like a small number of donkeys soon turned into a problem of enormous proportions. Over time, the donkey population in Australia grew exponentially. Today, it is estimated that there are more than 1 million donkeys in the country, many of them living in the desert. The exact number is difficult to pinpoint, as many of the donkeys are in remote areas, but the estimate is that this population continues to increase. The Australian government has attempted to control this growth in various ways, but success has been limited. The fact that donkeys reproduce so rapidly and have few natural predators contributed to their proliferation. Each donkey can have several offspring per year, and due to the lack of competition for food, their survival in the Australian environment became even easier. Additionally, the donkey has an impressive ability to live in extremely dry and arid areas, allowing them to explore much of the country's interior. This exponential growth of the donkey population is one of the biggest challenges for the Australian ecosystem. The introduction of donkeys to Australia was not without consequences. The uncontrolled growth of this population has caused serious damage to the environment, affecting the ecosystem in ways that many did not foresee. While donkeys are adaptable, they are not native to Australia and therefore do not play a natural role in the country's ecological balance. Their presence has generated a series of negative impacts, especially on the local flora and fauna. Donkeys compete for resources with many native animal species. They consume large amounts of vegetation, harming Australia's plant life. In some areas, this has led to soil degradation, as donkeys uproot plants and destroy important plant habitats for other species. This competition for resources puts many native plants at risk, some of which are endangered. Additionally, donkeys, being large animals, have a direct impact on water sources. As they congregate around waterholes, they end up contaminating these water resources with their feces, harming both the aquatic ecosystem and the species that depend on these sources for survival. The scarcity of water in several regions of Australia further amplifies this problem, making donkeys an even greater threat to the environment. Another issue caused by donkeys is soil damage. Their heavy hooves, when moving across large areas, contribute to soil compaction, which makes it harder for plants to germinate and reduces the quality of the land. This is particularly concerning in already fragile areas, such as the deserts and semi-arid regions of Australia. These ecological impacts have put immense pressure on Australian authorities to find ways to control the donkey population. While several solutions are being tested, effective control still seems far off. Controlling the donkey population in Australia has been a major challenge. Given the vastness of the territory and the adaptability of the animals, authorities have tried various approaches to curb the growth of this population and mitigate environmental damage. However, the solutions adopted so far have largely been ineffective or controversial, leading to an ongoing debate about the best strategies to follow. One of the main strategies adopted by the Australian government was the culling of donkeys. This process, known as culling, has been widely used to reduce the number of animals, especially in remote areas where control is more difficult. However, this practice is highly controversial, with animal rights groups strongly opposing it. They argue that mass culling is cruel and does not solve the long-term problem, as the donkey population can quickly recover due to their high reproduction rate. In addition to culling, fertility control has been another considered strategy. The use of contraceptives to limit the number of offspring has been tested, with sterilization and vaccination programs being carried out in some regions. However, this approach also faces challenges, as the application of contraceptives to large populations of donkeys in remote areas is extremely difficult and expensive. Furthermore, the long-term effectiveness of this solution is still being evaluated. In some areas, barriers and fences have been implemented to restrict the movement of donkeys and limit them to certain regions. While this measure helps control the distribution of the animals, it does not solve the problem of overpopulation in already infested areas. Additionally, collaboration with local communities and farmers has been an important component of control strategies. Often rewards are offered for capturing or removing donkeys, but this approach also faces difficulties, such as a lack of resources and resistance from local communities. Despite these attempts, the donkey population remains a growing problem in Australia, and the most effective solutions have yet to be found. One of the main reasons for the successful proliferation of donkeys in Australia is their ability to adapt to the desert environment. Unlike many other animals that struggle to survive in the extreme conditions of the desert, donkeys have found ways to thrive in this harsh and hostile territory. This makes it even harder to control their population, as they are extremely well adapted to the climate and conditions of the Australian desert. The Australian desert, with its vast plains of dry land and extreme temperatures, presents a challenging environment for many species. However, donkeys have an impressive resistance to these conditions. They can go long periods without water, a crucial ability in the desert where water resources are scarce. Additionally, donkeys' diet is mainly composed of low-lying vegetation, making them more resilient, as they can find food even in areas that many other species cannot explore. Another adaptive trait of donkeys is their ability to travel long distances in search of food and water. This is made possible by their physical endurance and their ability to live in herds, which increases their chances of survival. Through this mobility, donkeys can spread over vast areas, making it easier for them to multiply in remote regions of the desert. Furthermore, donkeys have a natural instinct to seek shelter during the hottest parts of the day. They hide in shaded areas or under sparse trees, which helps them avoid the extreme heat. This further enhances their resilience and ability to survive in the harsh desert conditions. With these adaptations, donkeys have become a significant part of the desert ecosystem in Australia, but at the same time, their adaptive abilities are what make them an increasing threat to the local environment. The future of the donkey population in Australia continues to be a major environmental challenge. Despite attempts at control, such as mass culling and the use of contraceptives, the solutions found so far have been insufficient to solve the problem in the long term. With the continued growth of the population, the consequences for the Australian ecosystem are likely to worsen, and it is urgent that new approaches be developed to address the situation. What makes this problem even more complicated is the resistance from Australian society to control measures. Donkey culling, for example, is widely criticised by animal rights groups, who see this practice as cruel and ineffective. On the other hand, fertility control is an expensive method and difficult to implement on a large scale, especially in remote areas where donkeys live. Additionally, traditional methods such as building fences and barriers do not address the issue of overpopulation in already infested areas. It is possible that in the future, technology will play a significant role in controlling the donkey population. The development of more effective sterilization techniques and the use of drones for monitoring remote areas could be viable alternatives to help curb the population. Moreover, more research needs to be done to better understand the impact of donkeys on the Australian ecosystem and how their presence affects other species. The biggest challenge will be finding a balance between controlling the donkey population and preserving the environment and biodiversity. It is necessary for Australian authorities and society in general to come together to develop solutions that take into account both the well-being of the animals and the health of the ecosystem. The future of donkeys in Australia will largely depend on the country's ability to deal with this issue in an effective and ethical way. So, what do you think about the donkey situation in Australia? What can be done to solve this problem effectively? Leave your comment below and share your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to the Celebrities Farm channel for more videos like this, and also for our next episode, where we will explore the world of farms and ranching with tips and curiosities about the rural universe. See you there. See you there.